In this video, we're going to bring together our CSS styles that we've created in an external style sheet and show you how to load those into a page and talk about some of the things that you might encounter as you try to do this for the first few times. All right, rule one, you've heard me say this a few times, but I really want you to understand that your browser is lazy and it hates us all, okay? Because you will be less frustrated. If a browser gets confused, it just stops, okay? It's not gonna go out of its way to help you, okay? Now, as you get more and more into troubleshooting, there are tools out there that can help you. And a lot of the browsers have some of these tools built into them now because browsers are getting better and better every day. But start with this assumption and it will keep you from putting a brick through your laptop as you fight with CSS and some of its quirks. All right, again, if it cannot find a file, it quits. It just stops trying and it's like, well, I'll just be over here. All right, you tell me when you fix it. So if you're doing CSS corrections to a CSS file and you've been typing away and you try to load it and you're not seeing anything happen, chances are you need to go back to the link in the head section of the page that you're trying to style and start on the last parameter, which is the file name, and make sure there's no capitalization differences, make sure the file extension is .css, make sure it's in the right folder, make sure that that folder has permissions, okay? You need to kind of back up and check the basics so that you don't spend a lot of time frustrated doing this. If you've ever had if you ever have a single syntax error anywhere in your style sheet, okay, everything below it is ignored. I've had probably 100 times students will say, hey, only some of my styling is kicking in. And without even looking at their code, I can say, go find the missing semicolon. Okay, because at the end of those styling statements, you have to have a semicolon. And if you miss one, everything below it is dead. It's just not gonna be able to parse it because it's looking for that missing semicolon that isn't there. And it may get to the next one, and then for some reason, with a browser update, it might say, well, I kind of know what this is, and you get very weird mixed results with your styling, and it's not predictable. So you need to go through your CSS very cleanly and make sure that your syntax is correct, because in most cases, your browser is not going to help you find out what's wrong. However, if you look at the web page and you see the styling works to a certain point, you can go back into your CSS and go, okay, that's about where it was failing. Oh yeah, look, there's a syntax, I missed a semicolon. Okay, so it can help you a little bit, but for the most part, once you break a CSS syntax rule, you're kind of out of luck. Okay, and like I said before, if you can't see your changes, something is probably not loading. Okay, and that's true for HTML tags as well. If you're trying to load an image and you keep getting the alt text, and one of the reasons I like to use alt text in those tags is and I don't word it like a generic error. I write something stupid in it that's obvious to me. Hey, knucklehead, it's not finding your image. Okay, so if you can't see changes, something's not loading. The CSS is probably not being found, or it's the file name's wrong, or something of that nature. Also, if you have not saved your changes, so you're typing away in your CSS file, you go to the browser and you just hit reload and there's no difference. Don't go back and just start making more changes and thinking you did it wrong. Make sure you saved the file, because if it's not written to the disk, it's not going to be opened by the browser. Okay, so if you're working in Notepad++ or files, I can't remember the name of the Mac one, but Text Wrangler. But if there whatever editor you're in, if you don't save the changes to the disk, the browser's not going to be able to see those changes when it tries to load the file. Okay, all right. So let's look at our HTML file that we've been working with in these slides examples, and you'll notice that we've put the link to load the web page in the head section. Okay? Now, under H1, because we used an H1 type selector, we don't need to do anything because that H1 is going to get the styling that we apply. Okay? Now, here is a paragraph tag with an ID equal to my ID. So what the browser is going to do is it's going to say, okay, this is an ID selector and it's called my ID. So it's going to go through your external style sheets or the style in the head of the page, but it's going to look for hashtag my ID. All right. So the way you invoke an ID tag or an ID style, if you will, is to use ID equals, which is pretty simple, right? It's an ID tag, use ID equals, okay? Don't use hashtag equals. It's ID equals my ID. Now, if you're using a class, you're going to say class equals and then the name of the class that you gave it. So in this particular case, we have an image class, which is set to picture class as a name. So the browser is going to go look for period picture class somewhere in your styling, either in the head of the page or in the CSS page. But that is basically how that's going to work. So again, type selector, okay, it's going to look for a tag that has H1. Now, if it does not find one of those, it's just going to leave it as a default H1. Okay? If we get to an ID selector, it's going to look, like I said, for hashtag my ID. And if we have a class selector, it's looking for dot and then the name. So dot picture class and then the styling. And like I said again, just to reiterate, if it can't find these or the names don't match, it's just going to do nothing to style those items. Okay? So sometimes your syntax will be in here and everything will be styled except this guy. And you'll be like, oh, wait a minute. Okay, I see what I did. I put too many E's in the word picture or something. Okay? So that's kind of what you need to know there. And just to reiterate, per the standard, ID selectors, you get to use them one time. Now, one of the things I do want to mention is you can have, if you need, an ID and a class assigned to a single tag. That is allowed. The other thing you can do is you can have multiple classes assigned to an individual tag. You are going to see that periodically where I have a very large section and I really need some styling from this class and I need some from this class and I don't want to make a third class because I've already created the two sets of styling that I need, so I'm just going to use both of those. Okay? Or there's something unique to this which is got by default, it's going to be of this type of a class, but I need an ID in here that will give me a little bit more control of this particular one because maybe this one's on the home page, okay? Or this is the one that's the form that you submit that's not used anywhere else in the website, okay? So you can combine an ID in a class or a class in a class, okay? So that is doable. All right, those are the basics. Now I think it's really important to kind of show you what this looks like and what the process is like. So we're going to do another Code with Teacher on the other side. But for now, I'll see you there.